Cinema puts us in some rough situations. Whether it's watching someone get surgically attached to someone else's mouth via their arsehole, or witnessing Divine eat a fresh dog meat. There's enough to put you off for life if you know where to go searching for it. Disturbing and dark, unsettling and uneasy, nausea-inducing and just downright nasty. Here's 10 scenes that will have you turn off your screen and walk away quietly for some internal reflection. These scenes have been picked for their point in the narrative build-up and their uncomfortable design. Whilst there's clips out there that will have you reeling from the disgusting visuals alone, hoping to never witness it again, these scenes pack the extra devastating storyline punch. With that in mind, I'm Ash from WhatCulture, and these are 10 of the hardest to watch movie scenes. 10. 127 hours. The 127th hour. Bringing a whole new dimension to getting caught between a rock and a hard place, 127 hours is a gritty endurance test of how far one man will go to survive. Just like the true story, director Danny Boyle subjects the audience to watch Ralston cut his own arm off with a dull 2-inch blade. Working his way through veins, arteries, tendons, and in one particularly wince-inducing chop, nerves, Franco depicts the torturous ordeal as painful reality. Coupled with some horrible sound editing and the tense build-up to Ralston's last resort moment throughout the rest of the film, it really is a difficult watch, one that you feel just as much as you see. 9. 7. Sloth Lives. David Fincher's Seven is the brutal tale of a serial killer playing out his modus operandi in the form of the 7 deadly sins. It's the early discovery of Victor, a child molester subjected to the punishment of sloth by our charismatic killer John Doe, that serves as one of the most what the f*** moments in the film. Strapped to the bed for a year to the day, the decomposing body of Victor is an ugly sight to see. It's quite the surprise then, when he suddenly jolts upright after the inspection from a police officer, revealing for the past 365 days he has actually been alive whilst physically rotting away in the room. Going to extreme lengths to keep the man alive, it's not only a jump scare, but a horrifying realisation for the audience as we come to understand what he's been subjected to. 8. The Godfather. Horse's Head. This is a bit of an old school one admittedly, but it still packs a punch over 40 years later. Telling the tale of aging patriarch Don Vito Corleone, who decides to pass on his crime syndicate to reluctant son Michael, we watch as mob war ensues between old families over their values, morals and allegiances. One such clash involves an offer you can't refuse, and a reasoning so intense that refusal will be the last thing on one's mind. Waking up to find his prize stallion beheaded and deposited into his bed, Jack Waltz gets a clear message from the Don to hire Johnny Fontaine for his latest movie. It's a dramatic, bloody and traumatising twist, one that has stood out famously over the years to the point where it's perhaps the most recognisable scene of the most recognisable franchise. A big claim to have. 7. Misery. Paul gets hobbled. When a freak blizzard causes romantic novelist Paul Sheldon to crash his car, it seems to be good fortune that Annie is there to save him from his perilous fate. A trained nurse with a spare room she dedicates to his recovery. Of course, it isn't quite as simple as that. Annie is Paul's #1 fan and wants to read the manuscript for the final novel in the Misery Chastain series. Cue Annie's uncontrollable rage at his authorial decisions, and in turn her need to control everything about Paul's condition. Using his incapacity to her advantage, she has demands about the content of his writing she forces him to carry out, culminating in one of the nastiest punishments on screen. When he escapes his confines, she places a wooden block between his legs and continues to shatter his feet with a sledgehammer. It's a terrifyingly violent act made all the more chilling for Annie's placid resignation and tinkling piano accompaniment. 6. American History X. Curb Stomp. American History Yard. A neo. 5. Deliverance. Squeal like a pig. Ed and Bobby get stranded on a riverbank after beginning a canoe trip with 2 friends. Finding the locals that they previously looked down upon wandering through the forest with a shotgun, they're taken captive. One tied to a tree, and one brutalised and forcibly raped. The whole ordeal is a very uncomfortable watch, but what makes it so much worse is his attacker's grunts of squeal like a pig. Some of the most horrible noises are created, and Ed is soon targeted as the next in line for their sexual abuse. There isn't anything that can make up for experiencing Bobby's pain, but watching his attacker get a crossbow bolt through the chest is somewhat satisfying. Rape revenge movies are almost never focused on the male equivalent, so this scene and motivation is a surprise one to say the least. 4. hard candy, castration. The premise of the film lies in Ellen Page pretending to be a vulnerable teenager to lure a sexual predator to his demise. As you can probably guess, it gets uncomfortable pretty quickly. In the most unnerving part of the film's climax, we see an unconscious Patrick Wilson strapped to a table, waking up to discover Page is about to perform a medical procedure on him. Not just any procedure, however, but a castration. He begs and pleads for her to change her mind, but the stoic and downright chilling Page has no such intention. She then cuts his testicles off and throws them in the garbage disposal. We later learn that the whole thing is a setup concocted by Page to punish Wilson mentally rather than physically, playing an educational video of a castration on a TV screen to convince him he'd been operated upon when in fact he remains all there. 3. Trainspotting, baby. Trainspotting sports a whole host of what the f moments, but none more so than discovering innocent baby Dawn has died. With screams echoing around the flat, and all 4 men faced with the sight of an unmoving child, witnessing the dead baby is a tough pill to swallow, especially for Secret Father's sick boy whose visceral reaction indicates an emotional attachment he'd buried deep in the face of his heroin habit. Whilst written and filmed with a dark humour underneath the tragic circumstances, it's this scene that casts all laughs aside and shows the true horrors of a life controlled by addiction. Nothing is quite as sad as seeing Dawn's traumatised mother begging for another hit after discovering her child's corpse. 2. Irreversible, the walk home. Referred to repeatedly as one of the hardest to watch movies ever made for those that have seen this nasty little French film, there's more than one scene that could make this list, another being a particularly brutal fire extinguisher attack. Irreversible is a fragmented story of Alex's rape and the revenge her boyfriend plans to get on the perpetrator. Set in Paris over one traumatic evening, it's the scene of this terrible act that remains one of the most visceral in movie history, playing out as a 10-minute long ordeal with an unflinching single shot capturing the entirety of the event, showing little mercy to the victim or us as the audience, forced to watch. What makes the film work as something other than exploitative is its broken narrative, one that frames Alex's trauma in haunting reality. 1. Requiem for a Dream, the end. At the end of this bleak tale of addiction and our perception of drug users, no one escapes their fate in this incredibly dark finale. All 4 main characters are subjected to their own hell. Sarah is condemned to electroshock therapy and loses what's left of her mind. Her son Harry is incarcerated, then has his arm amputated from a nasty injection site infection, and his best friend Tyrone is subjected to harsh prison work under racist guards while suffering withdrawal. Marion's fate is seemingly the worst of them all, with her body used as currency for heroin as she continues down the dark path of addiction, visualised in the shocking ass-to-ass sex scene. There's more than enough ammunition to leave you reeling, with all 4 symbolised curling into the fetal position as the film leaves them to their doomed lives.